Listen, you have to believe me, I do not have a microtile addiction. I've just been making more of them since last time. I think I'm up to 9 now. But today I want to talk about microtile number 6, which holds this special spot in my heart because it kind of has this constructive wave interference look to it. You have to imagine that I guess there's like a sound source in every corner and they're emitting sound. So there's kind of like these spherical waves or circular waves coming out of them. And I just wanted to map where the waves kind of intersect, this constructive interference effect. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's make microtile number 6. It's super simple. So like with any of these projects, I talked about this in microtile tutorial number 1. The setup is always going to be the same. We have a plane. This is where we're going to be making our material, the camera pointing downwards at it, so we kind of project the material on this plane and render it directly. Couple other things, we're going for 60 frames, making sure that it loops 30 frames per second, and the color management is set to standard. Oh, you're up to date? Good. But this is kind of the setup we're using every single time, so get that burned in your memory. To start off making this effect, the same way we start with everything. We start with texture coordinates. Why? Because we need to know the location of spots in the plane to extract information to then do stuff with them. For this one, I'm going to be using object coordinates because the nice thing about this is the origin is in the middle. I've talked about this. It's a nice little property. To make the sound source in every single corner, probably is a good place to start making just a single sound source and then copying it. To do this, it only takes a single node. We're going to take vector math, set this one to length, and when we view this, you're going to see it kind of makes this spherical, looks radial, but it's spherical gradient from the center. Basically, without getting too into it, object texture coordinates is a list of vectors, three-dimensional quantities. This vector math node just outputs the magnitude or the length, the scale of each one of those vectors, where the origin, 0, 0, 0, has a length of 0, and then as we go radially outwards, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Nice thing about this is if we add in another vector math node before this, and I'm going to have this one set to add, we could literally transform this coordinate system and therefore move this sound source. If we look at it here, we're actually just transforming these coordinates, which you can think of as the origin moving, which you can think of as the sound source moving. I'm going to map this into the top right corner. Let it be -1, -1, 0, because we don't care about the z-axis. And in this case, it would actually mess with it if we changed it, okay? Cool. So, do we need to copy this 4 times and then like mix and merge them? No, that'd be stupid, right? We want to automate this kind of process. How do we do that? Well, again, super simple. Take another vector math node before the addition, and this one's set to absolute value. Why? The reason is we have object coordinates where you can think of this as, again, the xy Cartesian plane, positive x, positive y, negative x, negative y, but the interesting thing about this is it's kind of separated into 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants, right? And if we could take this first quadrant where all the action's happening again, I already kind of did the reveal. Forget I showed this. If we take the top right quadrant where all the action's happening and duplicate it on the other 3, well, that would give us the sound source in all of them. That's the idea. And I kind of already did the big reveal, but you can see what this absolute value node does is it kind of copies the first quadrant into all of these. So before, after, reason this works is it kind of maps all negative values to positive values. So negative x turns into positive x, negative y turns into positive y. In other words, all the quadrants are now essentially the first quadrant where x and y are positive, okay? Which means that if we do this shifting, which it's going to be not visible if we don't have the correct value, you can see now we kind of have 4 origin points, again, because of the absolute value. We map those into the corners, we do the length, and now we have 4 sound sources. And they kind of, I mean, they don't really combine because you can't combine 4 different radial sources without like overlaying them one on top of another, on top of another. But this is a good start. You can see how there's kind of like the brightest in the middle, and then there's these kind of wave lines where they're equidistant from each other. Don't worry about it. Point is, if we now mess with this using now float kind of information, so again, we have all these purple nodes to mess with vectors, but now we have a single number since we outputted the length. If we set this to something like modulo, which is I think something we messed with a little last time, but we get this nice rounding effect. Wow, I picked rap and talked as if it was modulo. We get this kind of repeating pattern because the numbers that we get from before is some gradient between 0 and let's say 5, I don't know, maybe even 4, not quite sure. We take this, we start rounding it a bunch of times, and we get this kind of effect. When you get 1, you get this, and then as you lower it, you get more and more and more rings. And it should be kind of a function of the reciprocal. So if I do 1 divided by 2, I guess I get 1, 2 of these. 1 divided by 3, you get 3 rings, etc. I think I settled for 1 divided by 4, okay? And this kind of gives us this nice wave pattern where we have these nice radial centers. Again, we can actually move this, and I didn't do this in the render, but you can move these sound sources closer to each other. And then in the middle, you get a nice diamond, okay? Cool. Take this, set it to greater than whatever number you had here, just divided by 2. So 0.25 divided by 2, just so we get to the same thing as before, but now the gradient is not going from 0 to 0.25 or whatever, but we're saying take anything that is, from 0 to halfway in between. I'm butchering this, but point is, we're taking half the gradient and making it white and the other half black, or you could invert that with a less than, okay? That's the idea. If you wanted to make it very formal, I guess the way you would do this, and it'd be kind of lame, we don't need to do it. But you set up a value node over here, and then for what we input here, you divide whatever number this is by 2. And it should work. Let's see. So we can pick different values to get different amounts of detail. I'm not going to do that because that's stupid. Okay, cool. We have the base pattern, and now we're at the point in the tutorial where we need to animate things. Yay! How do we animate them? Well, what we need to do is just take the map from before, again, this length map that uses the 4 corners, and before it gets filtered, we just need to kind of phase offset it as if this was kind of like a trigonometric sinusoidal kind of thing. To do that, we're going to do an addition, so this is like literally a phase offset, as if that this is an angle that we're adding a certain linear quantity to. We add, and then it animates, right? One thing about this is you don't want to animate in the other direction or you're going to run out of information. Because we go negative, to fix this, you need to put an absolute value, but don't worry about that. Okay, cool. What we're going to do is, I guess we could have it go up to, I guess we can have it start with 0 and end with 1 is a good way to do it, because you can see as long as we go by an integer multiple, nothing actually changes. So the first frame, keyframe, on frame 1, we're going to have 0, and then on not the last frame, but one after that, so we're getting that 0 to 60 loop, where frame 59 and 1 aren't exactly the same thing. For this one, we're going to have it be 1, so now it kind of looks like this. It's not perfect, but you can see it does loop. The reason it looks weird is because the interpolation, it's Bézier interpolation, Bézier, as the French would say. It speeds up and slows down, and we don't actually want that. We want it to be a constant speed. T, set it to linear, and let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that's nice and hypnotic. You could definitely hypnotize somebody with that, get them to do something, I'm not going to say against their bidding, that's not ethical. Maybe you can improve them to be a better person. You can hypnotize them to stop smoking or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, again, reason we did this on frame 60 so that frame 59 and 1 aren't repeating. If we had this loop on frame 59, you can see a very gentle stutter. You'd have to really focus on it. Okay, cool. This is the base effect, but just to make it less followable, because right now we have this kind of hypnotic thing. We can mess with the position of the sound sources and all that kind of stuff. That kind of jazz, as people like to say. We could do all that, but it's still too easy to follow. So just a final thing to make it a bit more confusing, and I think we do this before the absolute value, but we can mess with that, is I'm going to have the whole effect rotate. So I'm just going to rotate the initial object coordinates before they get filtered through anything. So you can see now we have this rotating effect. And for the angle, and somebody recommended this, I think in the last tutorial, or maybe it was, I don't know. I think it was the last one. They talked about how this math node has a 2 radians effect, which is useful because this angle, even though it has this degree sign, it kind of operates, yeah, or what am I trying to say? It operates in degrees when you put in the letter D in the end, so 82.5 D, but if you don't do that, it's going to operate in radians. Point is, I think if we put in 0 keyframe, frame 60, 90, it's not going to give us what we want. Let's see about that. Wow, I guess I'm absolutely wrong. I guess as long as you have a D in the end, everything's fine. I thought this worked in radians. You learn something new every time. Well, okay, perfect. That means we can, again, do this on frame 60, not frame 59. We're going to go from 0 to 90, so it does a quarter turn. Make sure that this is also linearly interpolated, and then we have a constant speed effect. Well, I guess something that I can mention, what I was going to do before I tragically realized that in the end, we ripped off the Scooby-Doo mask, and it was degrees the whole time. Before we realized that this does have a 2 radians or 2 degrees function, so if you wanted to convert radians to degrees, you could be, go from 0 to pi over 4. No, pi over 2 would give the same effect. So that's just a thing you could do, whatever. But you can see that this kind of very hypnotic, I guess I'm getting hypnotized. This very hypnotic effect that rotates, that kind of has the wave interference that moves, etc. All of this is only taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 nodes. I don't even know if you count some of these. We don't need the viewer. Material output doesn't really count. And that just kind of emphasizes how easy it is to make this stuff. By the way, to clean this up, scale on the y-axis by 0, just so they're all kind of like vertically on the same level. Bring them closer to each other. And that's like how I like to organize these things. I mean, you could do it a bit nicer, but there you go. Microtile number 6. I hope you enjoyed this one. We learned the absolute value effect, this wave interference effect, rotation, stuff like that. Again, let me know if you want more of these or if you want me to stop. I'm just beating a dead horse, and this is like literally the most boring thing you could be listening to. I don't know. Make sure to let me know. And anyways, that's the end of the tutorial. If you want access to, and again, this is the part where I talk about Patreon, so leave if you want to, but there is some valuable information here for those of you who care. For those of you who want to join the Patreon, this is the spiel about why you should do that. Okay, so first of all, why would you want to spend money on Patreon? Well, first of all, blend projects like this one, like the previous microtile, like other ones that I haven't even posted, all of them available on the Patreon, including like hundreds of other posts, or maybe 100 to 200 other posts that have been made retroactively, or in the past is probably a better way to say that. You can access all of those just for one monthly subscription, all the blend files and the ones in the future, exclusive tutorials that are not posted on either the CG Matter or this channel. In fact, I posted a tutorial for MICROTILE number 2, not shown here. That is a Patreon exclusive. You can get those there. Discord access, early access, when I post a tutorial early, which I do occasionally when I can. Maybe even this one, we'll see. On top of that, I already said Discord access, behind the scenes, stuff like that. So, if you are interested, please do check it out. I want to thank all 570, 60, I don't know, some active patrons. You are single-handedly, as a group, keeping this whole ship steering forwards. I mean, the waves are trying to crash us, but shit's going correctly now. So thank you to all 560, 70 some people. I hope you're enjoying your Patreon benefits, which include Discord benefits. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. You now know how to make this effect, and see ya.